everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast, the podcast where we like to make learning a little magical. And today we've got a guest, which you would have seen in the title, and we'll get to them very shortly. But Magical Learning has been a training and facilitation company that's been going for over 25 years and worked with global thought leaders like Robin Sharma and John Mattone. I'm going to be working with another amazing thought leader here today. So before we get to them, though, Danette, you've joined us, and where are you calling from? And tell us a little bit about your week.
Oh, well, everyone can see my background, so they know I'm at the farm. This week has been a great week. Lots of travel just locally, which is quite a change because the last little while there's been more international. And next week I'm back off internationally for 10 days for work. So very excited just to be at home. It's a gorgeous, it feels like spring day outside, it's just freezing inside. So... But other than that, it's been a great week. Thanks, Jez. How was your week?
My week's been very good. Just been actually doing a lot of podcasts. And actually, if people want to check out the YouTube channel right now, they'll see that there's new graphic design for the YouTube thumbnail. So, Katrina, you're one of the first episodes to have this new graphic design, which makes us look very more schmick. So thank you to Allegra there, our team member, for designing those. They look fantastic. And Katrina, I've mentioned you a couple times now. Katrina Bourke, before we get into all your credentials and who you are, how's your week been?
Yes, my week's been great. It's been lots of variety, something different every day in work and home life. So that's cool. And it is a beautiful day here in Melbourne, and so it doesn't matter. Had the week have been terrible, it really wouldn't matter because the sun's streaming in and it's feeling good.
Yeah, Katrina, you like me sound like we're both solar-powered people a little bit, so it's good to get a little bit of that solar energy today, especially in Melbourne. You never know. Happy to have you on today. Now, Katrina Bourke, you're a leadership coach and facilitator, former school leader, and the author of Grounded, A Practical Path for Calm and Confident Leadership, which is what we're going to be talking about today. Very exciting. Based in Melbourne, Katrina lives with her partner, her dog, and a cat who's permanently unimpressed. I actually just took my cat off today to get the snip, our little kitten, so definitely on the cat and dog train there. She's a nature lover at heart and works with leaders and teams across Australia who want to make a meaningful impact without burning out. Her approach is deeply human, fiercely practical, and grounded in every sense of the word. She's here to talk about what it really means to lead from your own sacred ground and why being grounded might just be the quiet superpower we all need right now. So, Katrina Bourke, very happy to have you on the Magical Learning Podcast today. Now, as I mentioned, we're going to be talking about your new book, Grounded, A Practical Path for Calm and Confident Leadership. You've sent us a little early copy, so we've got to have a little sneak peek, and we've got some questions about it. But before we get into the questions, do you want to tell us a little bit about where you sort of came up with the idea for this book and kind of what it's about?
You know, I am increasingly convinced that we need to slow down. The world is so fast, isn't it? You know, and that way, that word busy, we hear it everywhere, and I feel, yeah, exactly. We hear it everywhere, but everywhere I go, my life included, everything is fast, and I do not operate well. And in fact, I've just had a couple of weeks of being a hermit, and it's just, as well as being solar powered, I think I'm silent powered as well, and just having that time. And I think how much, just to step into nature, it just fills me up. And I think if we could have a little bit more of that in our world for everyone, what a much better, calmer, more human place it might be. So that was the kernel right at the heart of it. And it grew into Grounded, the book.
Well, we're very excited to have you on to talk about it because it was an amazing book, and I was giving you some of my insights before we got into the chat, but we'll save those for the questions. So I think Danette always asks us some good framing questions. So, Danette, you've got some questions here. Do you want to tell us about them? And go ahead.
And firstly, congratulations, Katrina. How awesome. Very excited for your book. And I love the stories and that you shared, and the practicality in the book as well. And the whole thing about that space, totally agree. The busy bit, we're not effective. So first of all, I loved your title, which is Grounded. So tell us a little bit about what does being grounded really mean to you?
You know, I think it's a feeling. It is a feeling. So I mentioned before nature. So if I have the luxury of a lot of time, that's where I head. I'll head out into the bush. And just that, as soon as I kind of step into it, I feel very present. I don't know if that happens for others as well, but I'm right there, and your senses fill up, and, all the busyness here steps aside. And so I think it's that feeling of being grounded. And I think it's more than that, though. I often think about, strangely, I'm talking about ground, but I think about the ocean, and the navigation buoys out on the ocean. I think about those, and they, depending on how the water's going, either they're bobbing along nicely or they're getting smashed, or somewhere in between. I think that can be what it's like to be human in our world as well. And no matter how smashed around they get, they come back to center, don't they? And they've got that lovely ballast that kind of stops them from, going under or floating too far away or being blown too far away. And I think as well as that feeling of being very present, I think it's also that I'm anchored, and I'm not going to, no matter what spins around me, I can trust that I'll come back to center.
What a great answer. And obviously I live on a farm, so I totally get that grounded all the time. And it's when I'm traveling that I'm like, I can't wait to get home and just have that peace and quiet. So I love it.
Yeah.
So they're really curious. What prompted you to write this book?
Well, I'm still kind of partly curious about that myself. It's quite, isn't it an adventure and a journey writing a book? I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I guess as I played with that concept of grounded with the leaders that I work with, and, they add to it, don't they, as you share ideas, and they make it richer and, test my thinking. And then I kind of got to that point where I went, actually, I think I've got something to share here. I've got something that could be of value. And once I felt that it had a purpose, then I launched into it.
Love it. And I highly recommend it to everyone. It's a great read, and I love the models too, by the way. Anyway, we'll talk more about that later. and normally, just so our audience know, normally we've at least got one other person on, but we've got one of our team members, it's their birthday today, so we don't work on our birthdays.
No.
One's actually running workshops this morning, so we sort of ended up with just the three of us today, but it's going to be an awesome conversation.
An intimate conversation, it's a little more personal.
Exactly.
Unplugged. I love it.
And look, just because we're the only ones here doesn't mean we're the only ones that's sending questions. So we've got many questions from the whole team anyway. But I do want to jump into mine now quickly, just while I'm here. Why not? So I was flicking through your book, and I think it's really amazing. I think there's a lot to just pick up, even from like when I was going through the table of contents, so many interesting chapter headings. And to be honest, my eyes were drawn initially to this honor chapter, which you have. And you talk about the struggles of being able to lead when you don't have a full tank. This is something that I've also been kind of thinking about, people not having a full tank. So I was wondering, do you want to talk about that a bit more, and perhaps even how employees who are overworked may run into similar yet different problems when it comes to not having a full tank?
Yeah, so I guess where that came from was, like you, I started my early years on a farm, and in a very dry part of Victoria, and water all came from the tank, and that was cool until you ran out. And then the tank, I don't know if that happens to others, or if we were just poor managers of the tank water, but it gets to the bottom, right?
It does. Well, the worst we've had is 55. We're very lucky. The rain then comes, and my grandfather designed the house so that we use minimal water.
Wow.
So
okay.
back in the day when they didn't even have electricity, so he did such great design. We're very blessed. But I totally get you. It's so easy to run out of water.
Yeah. And so then you get down to the dregs, and you're confronted with all the mucky stuff that you wish you didn't really know was there when you're drinking the water. Yeah, so that's where that idea came from, because I thought about my own experience, and if I, for example, am not making that silent time or that nature time, then my tank depletes. And it's normal, right, to deplete the tank, but the problem is topping it up. And I think maybe that's where the rub is for lots of us, because there's some guilt associated with that, taking the time to top the tank up, or even we have the story of I don't have time. And that's back to that idea that we're spinning all the time. So it came from there. How do we encourage people and help them to see that topping their tank up is actually an act of service, and it helps them to be the leader that they say they want to be. So, and that can help with that storytelling about, it's selfish, or I don't have time, or, the guilt that can come with it. That's kind of what I think about around that idea of honour and topping up the tank, Jez.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it's something that's becoming more and more, as different parts of the world enter more parts of our life. It's just such an important thing to keep in mind, honestly. So I'm so glad that there's a lot of info in there, and your analysis of it I thought was really good. Let's jump over to Graham's question here. And so Graham's sent in one, which is: a business CEO pauses in front of their bookshelf and notices Grounded, a book they finished reading last month. What's one key takeaway that you'd love to know was tattooed onto that CEO's brain in that moment?
You know what? I love this question so much. I don't have any tattoos. It's not about the tattoo part of it, but I love that it opens it out, because, as you said at the beginning, my background is in education. I was a leader in education for a long time. And I can't help but see the world through that lens as I was writing the book. But there's so much more. I think it's for humans, not just leaders. And I think better humans. Jerry, a wonderful mentor of mine, Jerry Colonna, who's based in the States, beautiful book, Reboot. He talks about better humans make better leaders. And I wish I had a thought of that, because I love it and I think it's right. But so this business CEO, I love it. There's definitely a message for them. And as we've been talking, I think it's for everyone. I'd love them to have the word slow down tattooed on their brain, just to pause, to be able to be present, and then to be intentional about decision making and responsive. All of those wonderful things that are available to us when we slow down. That's what I would love the message to be. And I think it just requires a lot of courage to do that. That's kind of coming up for me as I'm talking and thinking about this Grounded more and more. I reckon it's a call to courage. I reckon it's a quiet rebellion, actually, against the pace of the world. That's a pretty audacious thing to say, but the more I talk about it, the more I think that. So I'd love slow down to be tattooed, and to be able to keep coming back to that.
Yeah, I love that. And look, we'll have to think of the font for the particular tattoo, so we can make it really cool. But no, but I think that you're onto something here, especially about the courage of it, because it's really having the courage to step outside of what most people are thinking, and that it's hard to sometimes say that you don't have much on the calendar or stuff like that because you feel of what the implications could be. But what you're saying here is that could really be actually someone who's healthy almost, like they're factoring in that time, and it's actually there's more courage in doing that because it's not what other people are doing. So I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, and I think, and also, if it's in an organisation, if you're slowing things down, or you're working from home, or whatever your version of that is, people can look around, can't they? And be thinking, well, what are they doing? I'm here working flat out. So it is courageous to do it, and to, but gee, what a flow-on effect it can have, especially, for a leader modelling that. So long as they're encouraging it in their colleagues as well, what a flow-on effect, and permission from the leader to actually do that. It doesn't have to be a whole day. It might just be little pauses throughout the day. In fact, that's much more practical, isn't it?
Yeah, totally. I was going to say, Katrina, my KPI for the future basically is how much time I actually spend up the back, sitting out in the sun, reading and learning and thinking. That to me is like, because I totally agree with you. It's the space that we create value. It's the space that we get to work with our body and brain in a really wonderful way. And so for me, it totally resonates. And I love that. We'll have to get Lega. So Allegra is quite graphically designed wise thing to do maybe a little mock-up of that slow down tattoo just so we can add it to the resources for the podcast, because I reckon that's pretty cool. She's the one having a birthday today, so happy
Oh, good
birthday,
on her.
Leggers.
I'll give her a day off for that. We'll let her slow down for the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, speaking of Allegra, she's here in spirit because I'm going to actually ask her question because I actually think it piggybacks nicely off what we were talking about. So, happy birthday, Legas. And Lega's question is, you talk about something called invite and inquire leaders. What are they, and have you experienced any in your time?
It's such a cool phrase, isn't it? I heard this from Michelle McQuaid, who is a positive psychology practitioner, and she was in conversation about this, and that phrase really stuck with me. And I think probably the easiest way of explaining it, the other end of the spectrum is command and control. So invite and inquire, I love that as a framing. And one of the first things that leaders and teams do when I work with them is decide who's the leader I want to be. Like, how do I want to show up, or how do we want to show up as a team? And so I think that can be a nice little a phrase that sticks here. And invite and inquire is what it sounds like. I reckon it's being curious, and I guess that's the inquire part, and the invitation is perhaps about creating the conditions that allow others to offer their opinions or to disagree or to challenge. I'm from the leader's perspective, am I creating conditions where teams know they're invited to disagree with me and it's safe to do so? So I think they do go hand in hand. Yeah.
Yeah. And have you experienced any in your time is the second part to that. Is there any that come to mind?
Yes, I've got a ripper who comes to mind, actually. This is a leader I worked with, and when I would go into their office with whatever question I had or story to tell or concern, they were terrific at being grounded. So they would become very present, so everything would get out of the way and I'd get their full attention, and they would say to me, "Tell me." Like, that was the response, "Tell me." And so it was open, go ahead and tell me. And also they genuinely listen to me. So I think that's all the layers, isn't it? Well, maybe not all, but plenty of the layers of, inquire and invite. Tell me, let me hear how it is for you. And then that leader also, I think that must be maybe curiosity or relationships would be one of their top values, because the other practice they had was in the mornings when they would get to work, they would go around and visit each staff member and, have a really brief interaction, but a genuine one. And because they were building those relationships, they were able to inquire about things that mattered, like, how was your son's birthday party on the weekend? And, stuff that makes us feel really seen and valued as humans. And when you're working hard, that helps fill your tank, doesn't it? To know that you're cared for and valued.
Yeah, and actually, this has actually reminded me of something. This is what you're kind of laying out is like when you said command and control, this sort of triggered this for me, but then the more you're talking about it, the more you're talking about good leaders as people that are like the opposite of dictators in a way. Like, if you think about what you're talking about, it's like people who want the truth, people who want to know how bad it is, and, no matter what it is, and they're inviting that so that you can help fix it. Whereas when you think of like down the opposite end of that, it's like wanting to control the truth maybe, or, they typically have ministries for, propaganda or what have you, but that's because they don't want to face the real thing. So it's really interesting, like, even in that, not to say that everybody that uses a command and control style in business is a dictator, but I'm just saying if you just are sort of comparing and contrasting, it is interesting, and it sort of opens up some, really interesting insights. So yeah, another great insight there.
Yeah. I reckon you've added a layer to that too, Jez, around about the genuineness of it, the authenticity of it. So it's fun. You can ask the question, can't you? Like, we all know that we've had that experience when someone's asked us the question, or, that we do it. This is back to the spinning. You'll walk past someone, they go, "Hi, how you going?" And they don't even wait for you to tell them how you're actually going. We don't, and you feel it and you know it. And so, yeah, it's not just being invitational, is it? Or inquiring. It's doing it from the heart, perhaps with genuineness.
Yeah. I heard a story about Nelson Mandela and how he ran his meetings was he got everyone else to speak before he did. So he inquired about their views because he knew that if he put his first, he would influence. So he just sat and gently listened to what was coming up in the room. And it seems like it's the same thing. It's that genuine, it's that active listening, just being curious about the other person's perspective. So I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for that, Danette. A great insight as well. Well, let's jump on to Kanika's question here. So Kanika's written in, we hear a lot on vision and values on this podcast, but you talk about it in your book going all the way back to the original concept of touchstones in ancient history. Do you want to talk a little bit about that a little and how vision and values can look for businesses in 2025?
Yeah, that's cool, isn't it? The touchstones. That was something that a mentor I worked with many years ago used as a way of talking to us. We were new leaders, and I remember we spent an off-site day with him, and he talked about touchstones as a way of grounding ourselves. Not quite the language to use, but that's the first I'd ever heard of them. And as the whole concept of grounded has kind of formed up. That kept coming back, and I had the aha moment. Oh, he was talking about values, but he was being much cleverer and using a great metaphor. But I love it because I love that idea of the touchstone. So the touchstone was used by ancient civilizations as a way of testing precious metals. So in my mind, I imagine they're at the ancient market, the souk, and someone comes in with their little bag of precious metals to sell, and the person buying it has the touchstone, and they strike the metal against the stone, and if the metal leaves a mark, then they can tell that that's not a precious metal. And what I love about it is the stone as that you test against it, and I think that happens to our values, doesn't it? They get tested, and for humans, individuals, and for organizations. So we can have our values or our vision. We might have excellence as a value, let's say, as an organisation. It's going to get tested. We're not going to be excellent at times, or a process that we have is not going to be excellent. So then, there's the test, and then what do we do about that? So I think that touchstone has, again, a lot of layers of meaning that can be really helpful to us as we think about our values.
Absolutely. And I think, especially with the world changing so much, like it's one of those things that's going to get tested again and again, because we're going through a lot of change. So that's really going to be the thing that's going to be the constant almost, You're
right. Well, and there's the courage. Really, see, courage just keeps coming up, doesn't it? So how do you, because our values are not everyone else's values, are they? Everyone has their own deeply held values, and at times that will be a real test. Am I going to stand by it, or will I concede or fold here? And I'm just thinking about, that's a Brené Brown, isn't it? Choosing courage over comfort, and I think that's in this space as well.
Well, very interesting. Well, let's jump on to Marg's question here. Marg has sent one in. And Marg asks, how can we use the lessons in here to be better leaders to the next generation? Are there any tips you could implement for kids?
Well, I would be a failure as a teacher if I can't answer that question. So here's what comes up for me. I was actually fortunate a couple of years ago to work with a group of student leaders for a year. And we used the framework that is in the book, the Grounded Leaders Framework. And we used that framework as a way of developing their leadership. So very briefly, the framework says, decide the leader that you want to show up as, decide on your vision, your values, explore the human that you are. So this is about self-awareness, emotional intelligence, honour the practices and tools that allow you to be the leader you say you want to be, and then get out there and lead. Make a difference. And so we use that framework with the student leaders. And what stuck with me was when we were doing that decide part, who's the leader you want to be, the students tapped into role models from the real world, the people that they look up to, that they're inspired by. And many of them came back with, as you might expect, celebrities, people they're seeing on YouTube and social media and music videos. And I was pretty judgy of that. And I kind of went, oh, the world's in a lot of trouble, because they were the stories I was telling myself. But then I talked to the kids about it and said, well, how are these people inspiring to you? What is it about them informs you as a leader? And they talked about things like courage, maybe acts of service that they'd seen, perhaps not in this language, but these were the things, the real kind of human values and actions that they could see in these people. And that's what was inspiring these kids. And that stuck with me, years later, because I think we can make those judgments about young people and, kind of despair for the world. But so I don't have a practical tip necessarily for how to apply this. What I really want to say is, for families, for adults, for people working with young people, wouldn't it be awesome if you could slow down and have those conversations with the kids and hear what's at the heart of, those things that are coming up for them? Because then we get to actually, I reckon, make a real difference, because we can see where they're coming from, and we can help to grow and nurture and encourage that in them.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great insight there. I think that's really good. It kind of reminds us to maybe watch a few more YouTubers. I haven't watched any in a while, but maybe I gotta get back onto it. Look, we've gone through our questions now, but I want to grab some final thoughts. So, Danette, did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation and the book Grounded?
Yeah. So, as I said, definitely recommend this book. Fabulous book. Just to your last point there, that you were talking about, Katrina, in terms of when we don't slow down and listen, we're actually not grounded, are we? And so it's not just in our leadership role. This book, the principles you've got, are really to remind people how they show up every day and how they can be, create those beautiful conversations. So, whenever I hear, we're judging stuff, and we all do it, and Brene Brown definitely talks about, we like to be a bit judgy from time to time, but it always says to me that my brain's a little bit in fear, because when we're in judgment, it's a bit of the ego coming out. What I love about your approach and your book is it's really about how do we actually show up as that really calm, authentic person who can create that beautiful space for those deeper, richer conversations. So totally loved today. I can't wait to see the tattoo, because I actually reckon that's...
Me too.
Yes, I'll give that to Leggers when she's back at work next week, and we'll get it up with the podcast. Such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation too. Awesome.
Awesome. And I was just going to say, Katrina, I mean, for people just to there's so much to take away from this, and I would highly encourage people to read the book, because not only is it sort of what we're talking about here, but there's a lot of stories involved. And I think no matter how you take in information, I think you've kind of made it accessible for everyone. Like, there's a bit where you're talking about wells, and that's kind of a bit of a sort of a theme. But then you start talking about also like sort of the mystical ideas around wells as well. So there's that sort of thing included, as well as, practical tips about how to be grounded and sort of thoughts on that. So yeah, a really great resource, and I highly encourage people to go check that out. And the link to get that is actually in the description of this podcast right now, so you can go click that right now. Katrina, did you have any final thoughts that we maybe didn't get to, or anything else that you want to leave our listeners with and viewers?
I think the piece that that comes right to mind is just to reiterate that courage. And something Danette said made me think, this idea of slowing down, I really want to encourage people to think that it doesn't have to be a whole day or a whole week. Like, we don't have to wait for the holidays or whatever. It can be just little moments throughout the day. So before I came to meet and to speak with you two, I have a very comfortable chair beside me, which I actually bought for my partner years ago, and he's worn it in beautifully, and now it's in my office. So I sat there in the sunshine and just had 5 minutes to just slow down. And so even just little moments like that, find little ways throughout the day and start small and watch the courage grow.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, that's fantastic. And it's very nice of your partner to sort of wear in the chair for you, so that it's now at perfect comfort level. That's a beautiful task by him. Now, Katrina, is there a spot that if our listeners and viewers have enjoyed this and they're going, I've got to reach out to Katrina, where's the best places for them to do that?
I think find me on LinkedIn, all the social places, and we are testing our own ability to stay grounded at katrinabourke.com at the moment because we're rebuilding the website. So you can go there, please go there, and we've got a little stay tuned, and you can join in and be in touch with the weekly newsletter that I send out. And yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to have continue the conversation. That's what grows this and really does make it that quiet rebellion.
Well, that is perfect. And Katrina, you've encouraged me to get grounded after this and go enjoy some sunlight while it's available in Melbourne right now. So I'm going to go do that straight after this. I want to thank you so much for being on the podcast. I want to thank you, Danette, as well. Great questions, great insights as always. To everybody that's been listening and sharing, subscribing, thank you so much. We're almost at 10,000 subscribers now on YouTube. So very exciting. It'll be maybe this episode, maybe the next one if everything's keeping pace as is. But otherwise, I want to say thank you to everybody. And as always, everybody, have a magical week.